go global, affecting women from everywhere.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual PPCM chat. We have another heart sister, Miss Courtney. She's going to be able to tell us her story and her experience on being diagnosed with PPCM. So, Miss Courtney, I'm going to give you the floor and just let us know exactly what happened.
Awesome. Well, my story begins about 2 months after I had my son, who is now almost 9 months old. He was 2 months at the time. We were actually Black Friday shopping, and I started feeling really sick. Like, my body was like shivering. I was having body aches. I honestly thought I had the flu. Well, I continued to be sick for about 2 weeks, and then I was like, man, this is just a really bad flu. I don't really know what's going on. So I went to a doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, you have strep throat. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took the antibiotics, and that was it. Well, I kept getting sicker and sicker, went back to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with bronchitis. Put back on antibiotics and fluids, and then sent home. And then I got to the point of getting so sick that my mom is a nurse. And so she kept checking my oxygen, and she was like, your oxygen's at a 74. You're not breathing very well. I was actually green, like my complexion was green. And so another week went by. I went to another hospital, and they kept me there for like 6 hours. And then the doctor was like, well, I think you have pneumonia. And I was like, okay. And so they put me on like 3 bags of fluids, and then they gave me 2 more rounds of antibiotics and sent me home. And they also did a chest x-ray while I was there. And they told me, oh, we think you might have a little bit of fluid in your lungs, but we honestly think it's just pneumonia. And I was like, okay. So they sent me home. Well, another week went by, and I was laying down on my couch because I couldn't go upstairs because I couldn't breathe to go up the stairs. And so my husband was down there with me and my son, and I was trying to fall asleep, and you could hear rattling in my chest. It was so bad that when I laid down, I had to catch my breath, even just to lay down. And so my husband's like, this is not normal. We got to get you checked out. Well, luck would come to have it. I went and got checked out on Christmas Day. And this amazing doctor at a Baylor clinic was like, listen, I know there's something going on. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm not letting you leave until I know what's wrong with you. And so they finally were like, let's do a chest x-ray. Let's run some blood work. Let's put an EKG monitor on you. My heart rate was running 140, and my oxygen level was at a 70. And so they were pumping me full of nitroglycerin. And then he finally came into the room, and he was like, at first he thought I had a blood clot. And then they did some more work, and then he came back in, and he was like, I think I know what's wrong with you. And I was like, okay. And my mom was there, and my husband was there. And he was like, I think you have heart failure. And I was like, okay, I'm only 25. So I just, at first I didn't even believe it because I was like, I'm so young. I just had a baby. And this doesn't fit into my picture, this doesn't make any sense. And so they transported me to ICU at a Baylor clinic. And then while I was there, I was seen by another cardiologist and a maternal medicine doctor. And they ended up doing oh goodness, can't even think of the word. Ultrasound of my heart. I can't even think of the word right now.
Ultrasound, echocardiogram, they do all that fun stuff.
Thank you. I lost words. And so they ended up doing that. And then I got the results back probably the next day. And they told me that what is the word? I cannot even think of words today.
Ejection fraction.
Mm-hmm. My ejection fraction was at a 30, and that my left side of like my left valve was leaking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
so they, and my heart was enlarged, and I had fluid around my heart and fluid in my lungs. They told me that if I would have waited another week, that my husband probably would have found me on my couch and would have drowned in my sleep. That it was so bad. But I mean, it's so crazy because you don't think of those things. No one ever tells you when you're having a baby that that's something that could happen.
Exactly.
And you know, like, I never had even heard of it before. And when the lady came in, the maternal medicine doctor, she was like, yeah, have you ever heard of postpartum cardiomyopathy? And I was like, nope, never heard of that. And she was like, well, did your doctor tell you anything about it? And I was like, nope.
No.
Never heard anything about it. And she was like, well, sometimes it happens, you know, but the good thing about it is, you know, a lot of times, you know, this recovers. And I was like, okay, well, that's, you know, that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, a good outcome.
Right. And I mean, she was great. I mean, everyone that I saw at that hospital was great. I just kind of wish that they would have been a little bit more in depth of what it was, because I was sitting there Googling on my phone. I was like, what in the world? Like, what did I just get diagnosed with? I've never even heard of this, you know? And then I started thinking, and I was like, you know, I never even saw a pamphlet or any kind of like magazine in my, you know, my OBGYN. I never heard of it. And it's just being on the page is like seeing how common this actually is. There's so many women that deal with this. And you would think that they would at least have even just like a little bitty paragraph about, you know, something to let women know, hey, you know, after you have your baby, if these symptoms happen, you really need to get checked out, because it might not just be the flu, which is honestly what I thought I had. Because I've never been so sick in my life, and I've had mono twice.
Wow. And your story is like so similar to mine. And like even around Christmas, like when you said Christmas Day, I was like, oh my gosh, like, because I was actually after I was able to go to get through Christmas, but I was so sick Christmas Day. And like my dad, because we had, you know, you go to gatherings and stuff. My dad was actually noticed how I looked. Like he was like, you just look like you just so sick. Like, and I'm known to having sinus infections. So of course that's what we thought I had. So he gave me medication for the sinus to be able to clear up. And I'm like, it just never cleared up. That night, it was Christmas night, when I laid down and I went into that same panic because I couldn't breathe. Like it felt like I was under the water. Like I'm literally underwater right now. So I had to hurry up and rise up, you know, and then that's when I went to the hospital that next day. So it was the day after Christmas. Or did you have to stay in the hospital like until New Year's?
Yeah, I was there the day before New Year's. That's the day they sent me home.
Me too. Oh my gosh, that is crazy. I was like, I'm gonna be here for New Year's. I was like, you know, but they was able to get us out. That's wow.
That's awesome.
I know. I'm just so glad that we're still here and able to be moms, you know.
Yes.
Because that's a close call. And I think that it is important to be able for an obstetrician to be able to let your patient know, even though it's rare, because they treat the rare conditions as if it's never gonna happen.
Right.
And of course, us being those patients, because we have a healthy pregnancy, and you had a healthy pregnancy the whole time, right?
With my son, I had a lot more of a healthy pregnancy than I did with my daughter. I actually had more of high blood pressure with my daughter than I did with my son, which my son is my heart son. And so you would think that I would have had higher blood pressure, but honestly, like with my daughter, I was admitted a week before I had her because they thought I had preeclampsia. And so I ended up having her at 37 weeks. And then with my son, I had him at 38 weeks. And so I was a little bit more healthier with him actually than I was with my daughter. So that was like so crazy to me. So I was like, even with my son, I really didn't have that many, you know, complications with him that I even did with my daughter. But the only thing that the only thing that didn't really surprise me, my family has heart issues. My mother was diagnosed with heart failure a month after I was. And so she's still currently dealing with that. But heart issues runs in my family. And so, I mean, it was a surprise just because of my age. But at the same time, I was like, well, maybe this had something to contribute with that because my mom has heart problems. My mom had her first heart attack at, I think she was 30 when she had her first heart attack. And so that was really scary because at first when they told me I was going into heart failure, I was like, am I going to have a heart attack? Like, I don't, because you don't know. You just kind of live minute by minute and you just kind of have to go with the flow.
Wow.
But when they finally got me into ICU, they were letting in some of my family to come back. And I had this really amazing nurse, and she really stood out to me because she was just, every few minutes she was updating me on what was going on. She was like, this is your heart rate. This is your blood pressure. This is, your oxygen level. It's not getting better, because that was the problem, is that they were having issues getting my heart rate to come down and my oxygen to go back up. And so they kept pumping me full of that nitroglycerin, which gave me a terrible headache. I mean, it was probably the worst headache I've ever had in my life. And I was like, man, what are we going to do if this doesn't get better? Because at the time before they brought me in an ambulance, they actually had to have a specialist come into the ambulance with me, other than the other ambulance drivers that were taking care of me, because someone had to be trained to give me the nitroglycerin. And so I had to wait on them to get there. And then when he finally got in there, he kept telling me, he was like, I'm having to go up on your medication. Do you have a headache yet? And I was like, no, I didn't get a headache until I got into the ICU. And then I was like, now I have a headache.
Wow.
It was crazy though. That was like the first time I'd ever had morphine, other than I guess my C-section. And so that was a strange feeling. I honestly thought they were just going to give me like hydrocodone, but then the nurse was like, oh, the doctor has morphine. And I was like, for a headache? I was like, it's bad, but it's not that bad.
Right. Oh my gosh.
And it helped me go to sleep, which I hadn't done in months. So
wow, that's the thing. I don't think PPCM really does feel that bad. I feel like you just have a regular cold until you lay down.
Yeah, right.
So that's exactly how I felt walking around. Like I was like, I'm dying. Like, oh my God. Like I was literally given a 50% chance. Like they didn't think I was gonna make it, and then with my sister passing, it was like, okay, well, it's inherited, and I was told it's not inherited, so I'm like, okay, this is weird, and I did the Google thing as well. Like I'm sitting up here Googling, like, what is this? Like I don't know what this is, and so it's just it sucks,
Hi, baby.
But hi, like I'm here doing an interview with your mom.
Hi, sweetie.
Oh, yes, our kids are adorable. She's adorable.
Thank you so much.
Yes, but I hope everything goes well, and it's going well with your mom and everything.
She's
we
doing
know
a lot
how
better.
hard that is. That's good. That
it's
is
hard.
So good.
She was
and
actually
so do
do what? Sorry.
Do they think that your PPCM could have been triggered from being like in a heart family, like a family with the heart issues?
They had mentioned that it probably could be, that since it does run in the family, that there's a higher chance that I would be affected by something like that. But I only ever met with my cardiologist one time. The other lady that I met with was his, physician's assistant. And so, I mean, she was very knowledgeable about what I had. And she did say that she thought maybe it could have something to do with that. But other than that, I mean, it's so strange to me because like my whole pregnancy, I actually was never really sick with him. I never had any problem. The only thing that I thought that was strange, that was not really similar, but kind of similar, when I had my 20-week ultrasound with my son, they found out that he had a calcified spot on his heart. That they said that it's almost like having a freckle. It's just kind of there. It doesn't really like do anything. It doesn't really cause any issues. It's just kind of there. And they kept checking his heart during my pregnancy, and he was perfectly fine.
That's good.
But it's so
That's
strange to me that, that was something that he had, and then after I had him, I had something go on with my heart. And so I don't know if had anything in relation or, anything like that. I just thought it was kind of coincidental that something, wasn't really wrong with his heart, but there was something abnormal on the 20-week ultrasound that I had never even heard of either. And so I had to do my research on that as well. But he's perfectly healthy, big boy.
Well, that is good to know. I'm like, that's one thing that the science that's in the science of researching right now, because they don't know if our children that are our PPCM babies or the post PPCM babies are affected in any way. Right now, of course, we it's up in the air, so we don't really know if it does or if it don't. But that's exactly why we have to bring more awareness, because right now they look at it as, oh, it's not important enough because a lot of women ain't going to go through it. So it's like, forget about the ones that go through it, and we're trying to get it off of that. We're trying to get more light on it, because the us, when we do go through it, it's like, it's important to us, and we're human. So, we deserve, just like the preeclampsia women, we deserve to be able to have that type of awareness as well, or at least for our obstetricians to be able to, hey, there's a condition that's rare, but we don't know who's going to get it. Because that's exactly what the cardiologist said. Like, well, we don't know who's going to get it. They don't know who's going to get it, So I'm just like so glad that we're able to discuss it and talk, and that, that we have other heart sisters willing to be able to share their experience and talk. Because it's so important, and I just really thank you so much for sharing your story.
Another thing that happened,
with me.
Another thing that happened that actually is kind of funny that I wanted to share that I completely just forgot until this point. So my son's first appointment with not his first, it was his 4-month appointment with his pediatrician. I asked her, I was like, hey, I was diagnosed with postpartum cardiomyopathy. And she goes, oh, what's that? And I said, do what? She goes, yeah, what's that? And I was like, it's heart failure induced by pregnancy. And she was like, I never heard of that. I was like, what? Really? Never? And she's like, no, never. And I was like, okay, well, let me explain it. And then I kept asking, I was like, well, do you think this might affect him? And she was like, I don't think so. And I was like, well, that's not a very good answer. So, but I do hope that they get some more information out there, even not just to OBGYNs, but even to pediatricians. That way that when women do come in and they are diagnosed, they can have a better answer than, what's that? Because,
exactly.
That's not a very good answer.
I felt like that the last time I had to go to an obstetrician I forgot what I had to go to her for. It was just, I think, well woman stuff.
Right.
And that's the first thing they say. Oh, I never heard of that. It's like, but you in the field, like, why haven't you heard of that?
Right.
But even my obstetrician never heard of it. So she was like in total shock when she found out that because I never got to my did you get to make it to your 6-week postpartum appointment? You never made it.
I didn't get to make it, and my OBGYN actually retired.
Wow.
And so I am currently looking for another one because he retired right after I had my son.
Oh, no.
So I was so sad because he's delivered almost all of my nieces and nephews. He delivered both of my kids. And then after my son, he was like, I have some news for you. I'm glad you got your tubes tied because I'm no longer delivering babies. And I was like, well, if you're done delivering babies, then I'm done having them anyway. So.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. That's awful. I know. I hate that our doctors have to retire and leave us and stuff. My obstetrician actually had to get transferred to somewhere else, so I have to find another one myself as well. But yeah, she came to visit on a cardiac floor and everything because she was just like in total shock. Because I had already been asking her certain questions like, what is this I feel in my heart? And I was like at 8 months pregnant, and she was like, oh, it's nothing. So everything that was nothing was actually something, but it taught her. And now she advocates for the condition being an obstetrician. Yeah. And so, she knows that, okay, I know that if my patient that's pregnant says something like this, it triggers her to be able to, okay, I think I'm gonna send you to a cardiologist, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
that way, you know, she will be one of those doctors that actually saved a patient, you know,
Right,
because like
exactly.
I
And it
said,
never hurts to be safe, you know. Even if it turns
right.
out to be nothing, then it's better than, you know, sitting there not doing anything about it. And then a few months down the line, you know, someone going into heart failure and then, you know,
Yes, exactly, because it's real and it
it
happens.
is. It does. And you never think it will, and then it does. So it's always better to be safe.
I did want to ask you one more thing before we get finished. Okay, and after overall everything that you had went through, like how did it make you feel? Did it have a mental feeling, an emotional, physical, or like do you deal with anxiety? Like how did it affect you?
After I got diagnosed and after I got on my medication, I've always kind of struggled with anxiety, but it definitely made it worse because I was questioning every little thing. I was like, okay, my heart feels funny. Am I going to have to go back to the hospital? Am I going to have to go back and stay? Because that was one of the hardest parts, was being away from my family. I didn't bring my kids up to the hospital to see me because I didn't want them to get sick. I was on the ICU and I was like, I don't know, what other people up here have. I have a little bitty baby at home.
Right.
And so the anxiety part was really hard. The physical part, I was in a lot of pain when I came home. And also, I think a lot of that has to do with your mental, because I couldn't even stand up to do dishes. And I felt like a failure. I was sitting there, I was like, I can't even do the basic things that I need to do for my family. And my husband, he's great. He was like, honey, I've got it. Like, you go sit down. I've got this.
Yay,
and then,
for hubby.
Oh, yeah. He's the best. He really is.
That is so wonderful.
And not being able to breastfeed because of the medication I was on was really hard. And being told, that's something that I could no longer do. And then you already feel guilty, because you're in the hospital. You can't be with your family, and then you can't breastfeed on top of it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you.
Kids.
You're a hot mess, girlfriend.
And what's the name?
Her name is Brianna.
Hi. Me and your mom share the same condition. Do the kids, do they know, like, are they aware of like how
she knows a little bit of kind of what happened. I don't think she really understands the full extent yet of what it was, but I did, she came up to the hospital after I got off of ICU. And she'd bring me breakfast with her dad. And so he kind of thought I was sick. And that's what I kind of told her. I was like, Mommy's just sick. Mommy's going to get better. And she kind of knows. She's went with me to a cardiologist visit before. And I've tried to explain it to her. But she has a sensory issue. And so she's very just kind of sporadic. And so she wouldn't even sit still long enough for me to even try to explain it to her in her terms.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I know my daughter, even though she's 3, she always touches, because I have the ICD. You didn't have to get that, did you?
No.
Right. Okay, that's good. I'm glad. Yeah, so I have that, and she wants to touch it and be like, Mommy, your heart. And then she always thinks it's something wrong with her heart. And so I'll be like, it's nothing wrong with your heart, baby. So that's another part of dealing with this, and at the mental, the physical, and just trying to get through everything.
Right.
But I don't want to take too much more of your time. Hold on before I end it. Thank you guys for tuning in on our virtual PPCM chat. We'll see you guys next time. And hold on, let me end it. Stop it.